Hello everybody, we're going to do a tutorial today on animation and physics collision detection in Unity. In this game or example, there's a torpedo. It's basically just fired. It has an animation for that, so we'll open that animation window up here, and there it's already created. We're just going to review it. So this is the animation. It's basically composed of a timeline, and then it'll shoot out, and there's various keyframes here where coordinates change, and then it affects a change in the direction. So this is just a positional transform on the X, Y, and Z values. As you can see, this goes forward to 6, and then now to 9, and it drops to on the y-axis to go underwater, and then on the last end of the keyframe it's out 30. So here's a running of it in its entirety. Now another thing, just to show you, maybe you want to change, you don't want it to go down when it goes out, maybe you want to go up, maybe the application or game might involve like a missile in the air or something like that. So what we're going to do is change the Y values in these two keyframes to 2, and then let's do a test. So now you'll see it go up, see, through the air and so forth. So up and then forward. So that's the way you change it. Just manipulate or change the values for each coordinate on the keyframe to change where they are at that point. And then what Unity does is it does a gradual shift from each coordinate XYZ to the next over the duration of the time frame between the two keyframes. So here's a test, just double checking. I've set it back the way it was before for the test for this tutorial. So that looks good. So let's move that down. Now animations are controlled through animators in Unity. So the animator, you set states. In this case we have an idle state which goes straight there. Then it goes to the torpedo launch animation, which is what I just showed you, but then the question is, how do you go between? So here's this intermediate connector, and what you have to do is set a condition. So I've got this variable, Boolean variable, torpedo has been launched, and it has to be set to true. So now in this script, here it is. We're just basically going to check on each update call on each frame, first which controller is active, and then what we're going to do is check if the button if the button's been pressed down. So that's the button primary index trigger. So here's a diagram of the Oculus Go controller. There it is. That's what that maps to. So that's the physical button, and then here's the code, which would detect if it's set to true on each frame. So there, if it's true, then it'll call this fire torpedo coroutine. It launches a sound, it plays an audio, and then it'll set a Boolean value in this animator. So that animator is tied to the torpedo. And you could set a value on it, the Boolean value for that variable that will help launch it. So that torpedo been launched, and then you set it to true, and that's the condition. If it's set to true, it'll fire and launch, and then run that animation. There's some other little animations on the propellers and stuff, and then it waits a little while before it disables it. But that's the gist of it. So let's test this. let's see here. So that will shoot out. Make this a little bit bigger. So torpedo. There's the scene. I'm going to have to press the space bar to trigger this instead of the okay, it's running. So I'll press the space bar instead of the button because I don't have the controller connected. It's emulating that. It'll go forward, and then there's a collision, it blows up. So and then there's another animation run on the ship. It sinks. Some fire. So now I want to show you the animator. So this will start running. So the animator, you can see, is in that torpedo idle state. It just sits there until that variable's set. The variable will be set either pressing the trigger on the controller, or in this case on the Windows. I pushed it. Now it's running that animation. And when it hits it, it just stops everything. There. And then it disables the torpedo once it blows up. So that's the idea there. So let's see here. On the script, I'm going to go over now to the ship. That has a script attached to it as well. And so what we need to determine also is, well, how do you know when something hits something else, and what do you do after that? So we have to detect the collision. Unity has a physics engine, and it can detect collisions between different objects. So that's what this onCollisionEnter function is. It'll detect it between a rigid body and a collider, between two rigid body and collider objects on separate game objects. So in this case, there's the ship. It has a box collider and a rigid body. I'm gonna show you the box collider. It's just that. It's a box. You set it. You can drag it, make it bigger, smaller. So that'll set the boundary for what's hit physically. Often in games or applications, unless you need the precision, it's better. The box colliders are simpler to calculate versus a mesh collider or more complex colliders. So same thing with the torpedo on the tip. It was put on the tip here because that's where it would blow up. By design, put the box collider there. There's also the rigid body as well. So when that occurs in this design, it'll actually get the name of the colliding object. It checks it. And then it sets off various things like the explosion object, and then it'll activate the ship sinking animation and so forth. So that's how that works. Now in this case, I'm just also showing you the animation on the ship sinking. It's more complex. It has a position change as well as a rotation. When you go to the first keyframe, it's just still zeros on everything. On the next one, it's going to go shift positions as well as rotate 90 degrees, simulating a ship sinking. So it goes down underwater, and then it goes a little forward on the z-axis, and then it'll rotate 90 degrees as if it's sinking. And then the last keyframe here shows quite a bit below the surface. So I'll run it. Now you can see it running through the animation. It's gradually rotating and moving the position as well. It'll go down. It's bottom side up. And once it hits the second keyframe, it sinks. It's designed to sink quickly. So the goal in this tutorial is to show animations in Unity, how they work, as well as through box colliders, how it detects collisions in the physics engine, as well as use scripts to control and manipulate these things.